Hello and welcome to Inside Sports. I'm your host, Todd Blackstock. We have a great show for you today. As four-time Pro Bowler for the St. Louis football Cardinals, Mel Gray is in the house. Plus, legendary football writer and radio personality Howard the H-Man Balzer carved some time out of his busy schedule to join us as well. Our flashback today looks at one of the marquee moments in the career of NFL Hall of Famer Jackie Smith. And Melanie Steen has a story about how the outstanding season the U City softball team had and the impact on the community. So stay with us for this and much more coming up next on Inside Sports. Episode, Gladiator reality TV star Derek Aspen Scott joined us to discuss his national championships and to promote his upcoming cage fight at River City Casino. Well, we're happy to announce Derek won his fight early in the second round by a rear chokehold submission and remains undefeated. We'll keep tabs on him as he continues his dominance. A lot of cool things are happening in the area this December. For winter sports enthusiasts, the Hidden Valley Ski Resort opens to the public in Wildwood December 21st, so grab your ski gear and head over for some great outdoor activities. Well, the Mizzou versus Illinois bragging rights college basketball game will take place once again December 22nd at the Enterprise Center. And in other news, the Missouri Valley Conference just signed a 5-year extension to hold Arch Madness in St. Louis. And you all know the winner of that tournament stamps its ticket to the NCAA Big Dance. Well, I'm honored to introduce to you our first guest today. He's a football track star at Mizzou, a 4-time Pro Bowl wide receiver for the football Cardinals, and is now giving back to the Matthews Dickey Boys and Girls Club as a coach. At this time, we welcome Mel Gray to Inside Sports. Mel, thank you so much for joining us.
Not a problem, Todd. How's everything?
Oh, not too bad. I guess for a kid from Fresno State, you know, coming up, run a little track and field, you set the California or Fresno area 100-yard dash record back in the day.
Correct. Back in 1967, you know, it was all God sent. You know, I knew I had some speed, but I didn't know how much. I ran, but then there was a young man. There was a custodian at the high school in Montgomery High School in Santa Rosa, California, who saw me and said that he can show me something. Now, being a little kid, and I'm asking him, how can a janitor show me something? But he's God sent. I mean, he took me from 10 flat to 9.4, from 23 flat to 220 to 20.7, long jump 20 feet to 24.7. So it was amazing.
So then you went to Mizzou, you played with Dan Devine. That must have been quite a treat right there.
Well,
I mean, some legendary teams there. And I guess Johnny Rowland, some of the guys, some of your predecessors right there.
Johnny Rowland, Roger Whirley was there, Gus Otto. So, but then when Dan Devine came out, he came out to the track meet. And he was setting up in the stands. He had sent Clay Cooper, I don't know if John Cadillac came out. You know, I got a great memory, but, you know, it's short. And they came out and they viewed me, but Coach Devine came to the track meet. And we were sitting up in the stands. He said, Bill, you set a national record in the 100, but that didn't impress me. And I had to look at him. I said, well, what about the 200? He said, well, you set another national record, and that didn't impress me. I said, well, what about the long jump? He said, well, you took second in the long jump, but that didn't impress you. I said, well, what impressed you about me? He said, the relay. I said, we lost. He says, I know, but you were the last man to get the baton, and you passed up a few people, so that showed me that you were not a quitter, and that's what I want. So we talked about it, and my mom wanted me out of California, so Mizzou was a place to go. Dan Devine told me everything correct, except he didn't tell me that it got cold in the winter. I never witnessed that before, but he had a heck of a coaching staff, John Cadillac, Clay Cooper, Vince Tobin, Prentice Scott. Oh, we had a great staff.
Yeah, you set some records there. I think there was a stat one year you had like 25 receptions for like well over 700 yards and a bunch of touchdowns. It doesn't seem like a lot of receptions over the course of a season, but when you did get the ball, you made things happen.
Well, we had a heck of a team down there. I mean, you know, I commend the coaches for bringing all these guys together from all over the country and putting this puzzle together. Because when I first got there, and before I got there, Dan Devine said, we got an offense just for you. So when I get there, I'm sitting on the bench waiting on my turn. And I said, Coach, I want to play. He said, you really want to play? I said, yeah. So he put me in as a kickoff returner. And I said, right or left or middle? He said, we go up the middle. I said, what if there's no hole? He said, you make a hole. So we're playing Army, and there wasn't a hole. And I couldn't make a hole, so I jumped over the pile right onto this kid's helmet, knocked the wind out of me. And that kind of woke me up a little bit. So I started making my own holes around it. But they had a pretty good offense. They had a lot of, ball players. I guess from here in St. Louis, they had Joe Moore, Jim Harrison. Joe Moore's from St. Louis. But they had John Staggers, Terry McMillan, heck of a line.
A lot of guys. Then you made your way to the pros, sixth-round pick for the Cardinals. Being from Mizzou, going to St. Louis, that must have been a nice segue transition there.
It was a little different.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know that I was big enough to play. As a matter of fact, it was a deal my senior year. They said that I was too small to play, so I was working in a bookstore in San Francisco. And we were reading in the paper, and the boss read it. He says, Bill, you got drafted. And I'm thinking, to the Army, right? And so I says, no, I'm not going. He says, football. He said, you need to call the Cardinals. So I called them, and they said, we've been looking for you. I said, really? And they said, can you get to St. Louis? So my boss brought me a ticket to St. Louis, and the rest is history other than the other little paperwork that we had to go through.
Now, you were there. I was with Holloway there at first, and then Don Coryell came in. What was it that Don Coryell brought to that offense that made it so exciting? Was it, coming out from San Diego State? Because you were an instrumental part of that
Don
team.
Coryell was the player's coach's dream. Bob Holloway, I don't know, he worked at, coached at Minnesota, but I don't think he was offensive-minded like Coryell was. Coryell came in, he wanted to throw the ball, and he named me his starting receiver, and I said, you kid me? But his offense was next to none. I'm pretty sure they're still using some of that right now.
Now, there's a lot of great players. I mean, you played with Terry Metcalf,
Yeah.
Jackie Smith, Jim Hart. I mean, some really good players. So it was probably in a 14-game season before the wild card. Was it hard to get touches?
Well, it wasn't that hard. It was, they had me running deep, period. Sometimes they threw me the ball. Sometimes I was a decoy for someone else to get open. I didn't mind as long as we won the ball game. But when Coryell came in, he said, Mel, I want to have you fake like you're hurt. I said, why? He said, just fake like you're hurt. And I think we did that against Dallas. And I limped off the field. And they put in Gary Hammond, and he threw a pass to Jackie Smith. And he got Charlie Waters, Cliff Harris pulled him down, but they put me back in. And so when Charlie Waters thought I was hurt, so he came up. He was usually off for me about 10 yards, but he came up to about 7. I kind of laughed under my breath, and when I went by him, he said some adjectives as I went by, but it was his offense, his scheme of putting things together was amazing.
What was your defining moment as a football Cardinal? I mean, 4 Pro Bowls.
Well, I wanted to play earlier. It was, this was Bob Holloway. He put me in the game and took Dave Williams out, and Pete Beathard threw me a pass for a touchdown. We were playing the Giants or somebody, and I think I scored 2 touchdowns that day, and I said, well, maybe I can play this game. But Holloway was telling me that I wasn't tough enough. I'm in the weight room, I'm benching 315, I'm thinking I'm strong as battery acid. So in '72, we were playing Chicago Bears, last preseason game at Busch Stadium, and I was going to prove to him that I was tough enough, and I said, I'm going to run into Dick Butkus. And I'm hiding behind Dan Dierdorf, you know how big he is. And so when Dick Butkus came around and I came out and hit him, Todd, biggest mistake I ever made in my life.
Oh, I bet.
God,
That must
it's
have
like
hurt.
running into a tree. I was out the rest of the season. So they were telling me, Mel, do you know anything about longevity? I said, what are you talking about? They said, you keep running into people like Dick Butkus, you're not going to be around here long. So it kind of straightened me up a little bit. But I felt that I could play because I had speed. And not necessarily running anything underneath, but just throw the ball deep, I'll go get it. And
Do you have a
that made
favorite
me hard.
teammate from the Big Red?
Favorite? The whole team.
Oh, that was a
The
great
whole
team, wasn't it?
team,
Now, you were in the
right.
Pro Bowl 4 times. What was the Pro Bowl like back in the 70s?
The Pro Bowl was a lot of glamour, It wasn't a lot of, I think there was about 2 days of practice. But you're meeting all these guys from the league, people that I looked up to before I got there and said, oh, man. I mean, I'm like a little kid in a candy store. But then the day of the game, lights, camera, action. You know, everything was different, but it was wonderful. I enjoyed it.
All right, hold that thought because we're going to continue in a minute. Okay. But it's time for our Inside Sports Flashback, looking at one of the amazing moments in Mel Gray's teammate, Jackie Smith's career, which helped him get inducted into Canton. And when we return, one of the 48 Hall of Fame inductors, Howard Balzer, will join the discussion. Let's take a look. It took you about 14, 15 years to get inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is way too long. Was it because of the lack of playoff time, you know, the Cardinal teams had and the lack of exposure? Because I know that the run that you made against Dallas, you know, I think you broke 8 or 10 tackles. I was in my aunt's house for Christmas or Thanksgiving or something. But I ran in the other room and got everybody to come back and watch that replay. But that was the run that some people like Dan Dierdorf and Jack Buck kept pushing and pushing. And I know those guys were very instrumental in getting you inducted into the Hall of Fame. Do you think that run was the defining point of your career, catch run?
Well, I don't know. I think that it was. I think that you have to include some other things in there too. But that was. A lot of people seem to remember that run. And the funny thing about it is that I was so mad at Jim because he didn't throw me the ball when I was open. I went back to him and I said, "Damn it, Jim, I'm open." That's only the second time I've ever said, you know, "Please throw me the ball. I've been open." So he threw me the ball and I wasn't open, but I had to catch the ball because I said, "I better do something with this thing." Jim would be all over me. So I really tried a little bit extra maybe on that play just because I had opened my mouth because I was so wanted to get the ball so badly, but that may be that had a lot to do with it, obviously. But a lot of it has to do with the people that are backing you too. And I know my friends Vittert and Carney and Dan Dierdorf and of course the wonderful and great Jack Buck were very instrumental in doing that. These guys have so much respect for Jack Buck. I think he could get almost anybody into the Hall of Fame if he said, you know, "You guys really need to do this for me." They would do it for him. He was just a wonderful man.
Joining our conversation with Big Red Great Mel Gray is the host of NFL Kickoff on 590 KFNS from 10 to noon on Sundays. Former pro football editor at the Sporting News, a former columnist at Pro Football Weekly, USA Today, and senior editor of Lindsay's Pro Football Magazine since 1993. The king of football writers, Howard Balzer. Welcome to the show, Howard. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, and I'll tell you, it's great to be sitting next to, if not the fastest man in the time in the NFL, but certainly one of them, and I guess you can call me one of the faster talkers. So it's a good duo.
You know, I was so excited, you know, when to team you guys up, and you spent so many times, you know, kind of grew up in the same era together. You're covering it, you're playing it, and you know, the St. Louis football Cardinals, they had a lot of, you know, things spoken about the owner, you know, the frugality and things like that. But you know, when you think of Jackie Smith and him getting to the Hall of Fame, how great a tight end he was for his era and in the whole generation of the game. I'm not sure the football Cardinals have treated him and maybe some of the other players that played in St. Louis as well as they should have.
I think it's a big question. I know Mel will talk about it, but Jackie especially, because there's 13 people with significant Cardinal backgrounds in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not all players, there's some owners and coaches, but there's 13. And Jackie is the only one that is not in the Ring of Honor at the stadium in Arizona. And recently this fall, they had a Hall of Fame event at their stadium on a Saturday before a game, and they brought in Aeneas Williams from St. Louis, Roger Worley, who's moved to the Arizona area, was there signing autographs. They brought in the busts of the St. Louis, the Cardinals-related Hall of Famers for the fans to see. All the busts except Jackie Smith. So there's something went on with Jackie and the then owner, Bill Bidwell, who unfortunately passed recently. Some who hope maybe now that you can just solve this thing. It's been over 40 years, whatever happened back then. It's been a long time. It's about time that they bring Jackie Smith into the Cardinal.
Yeah, wasn't there something about, there was a physical, and Jackie came in to take a physical after J.V. Kane, or something happened, and Jackie came in, took a physical, and then it didn't happen?
It didn't happen. They said he failed the physical after that, and then he signed with the Cowboys later that season when they had an injury at tight end, and of course he ended up going to the Super Bowl. But there was some disagreement there, and when the Cowboys people contacted the Cardinals and asked them, well, we had heard that Jackie was going to come back to St. Louis, what happened? And Bill Bidwell denied that any contact had actually been made with Jackie Smith, which he was just flummoxed by that. So he might have said some things at the time, being a little bit upset. And so there was obviously a rift there between Jackie and the owner. And we know that there was a lot of players maybe had something going on, but this one became a little public. And most believe that there was something there that, like I said, over 4 decades, they couldn't get it solved and let bygones be bygones.
Well, how do you feel about that? I mean, you knew Bill Bidwell. I mean, we know he's frugal. He didn't like to pay top dollar, but he was a peculiar man. But could you see him just holding a grudge for that long against one of the...
Well, I think so. I mean, Bill and I didn't get along that well. We had a few words, and then if you got on his wrong side, he didn't forget anything. He kept you there, you know, and there were some things I'm not going to talk about now that he and I had a lot of discussions. And you have to act accordingly. You have to bow down to him like king, whatever. But anyway, it's, oh yeah. Yeah.
And I think some of the things that Jackie might have said at the time was people would ask him, hey, what's the difference between the Cowboys and the Cardinals operation? And Jackie would say night and day because he's now experiencing a team that obviously did things much differently. And I'm sure some of those comments probably got back to the man in charge.
So how do you rank that football Cardinals team in the mid-'70s? You know, there's no wild card at the time, but you know they're like 10-4, you know, and not making the playoffs. That was one of the great team. But I know as a man in the trenches, covering all those with all the pro football magazines and newspapers, you know, you saw firsthand.
Yeah, I wasn't here in St. Louis then. I didn't come here until '78. But certainly, I certainly remember the Cardiac Cardinals and all the talk about them and seeing what they were accomplishing. It was pretty phenomenal. It was pretty amazing what they were able to do in that short period of time. Unfortunately, it didn't last. And Don Coryell, of course, moved on and then had some great years with the San Diego Chargers. But yeah, that was an incredible time with the great offense that Coryell brought. And the one year when they set a record, I think Jim Hart was sacked 8 times in a season. Yeah, and Dan Dierdorf always tells the story that, and 8 of them really weren't on the offensive line. One of the sacks came when there was a fumbled snap on a field goal, and Jim Bakken, the kicker, picked it up to try to throw the ball to make something happen because it was a bad snap, and he got tackled. So that counted as a sack. But it wasn't on Jim Hart. So that was pretty amazing what that offensive line did. And it shows. I mean, even in the NFL today, I mean, everyone talks about the quarterback, the offensive coordinator. Most of the time when an offense doesn't work, it's because of the offensive line. And that line, I'm sure Mel would agree, was unbelievable.
Next to none.
What was it like in the huddle looking at Conrad Dobler and those guys?
Because Jim Hart took control, but there was Dan, Bob Young, Conrad Dobler, Roger Finney. They were all awesome. Tom Banks, Wolfman.
Oh, yeah.
Could you see opponents not wanting to go up against Conrad? Because Conrad was certainly a way he played the game.
Conrad was awesome. I mean, he did things that I don't think another lineman would do. I mean, run 50 yards and hit somebody after the whistle is blown. But, I mean, he did a lot of crazy things, but it was good that he was on your team and not anybody else's.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, Howard, you've made history with ESPN. I mean, they didn't always cover the draft on ESPN. It was probably like, it was a big deal, but it never became a TV spectacle. And you were the host of the very first NFL draft on ESPN. So you're kind of a trailblazer yourself. Can you describe that first draft, and did you put it together yourself?
No, I wasn't the host. I was one of the analysts. George Grand, I think he might be still doing baseball these days. George Grand was an anchor in New York, and Bob Lee, who just retired from outside the lines at ESPN, was the anchor and the host in Bristol, where I was, along with Vince Papale. Remember him? He played for the Eagles when Dick Vermeil was there and had the movie Invincible after him. But it was very different, and it was, when you look at where it is today and what it was then, with technology obviously, and they didn't have cameras at all the different teams. But I do remember when Chet Simmons used to tell the story, who was the president of ESPN then. He approached Pete Rozelle, the commissioner, and said, now remember, when they televised that first draft, it was April of 1980. ESPN had just come on in the fall of '79, so they were a fledgling network. They didn't have a lot of programming. They were looking for things to do. So Chet Simmons suggested to Pete Rozelle that we'd like to televise the draft, and Pete Rozelle said, well, why in the world would you want to do that? And now these days it's on 3 networks. And it was pretty incredible being involved in the beginning of it. I did it for 8 or 9 years, and it was really a tremendous experience to be involved with that.
Now, Mel, you took a swing at the USFL, You know, I know you were telling me before the show it didn't really work out as well after your playing career in the NFL. And Howard, you've got a really good story about the USFL. You guys both kind of tie in if you want to talk about this. Donald Trump, our president, was involved with the USFL, and he made some noise back then with that. Maybe you could kick it off.
Well, he basically, in a lot of respects, was responsible for the demise of the league. And he became the owner of the New Jersey Generals, and he convinced the other owners, and they had a pretty good thing going there. It was played in the spring. They were getting good, pretty decent attendance, good TV ratings. They were going after for some NFL draft picks, some veterans getting over. I mean, Steve Young started there. Herschel Walker, of course, started there. Kelvin Bryant, a lot of pretty good players signed. And so Donald Trump, in the back of his mind, said, okay, he convinced the other owners, we need to go to the fall and play football in the fall and get a TV contract. Well, most of the owners knew that there's no way we're going to get a TV contract in the fall, going up against the NFL, college football. Well, he convinced the other owners to try that. And then when they didn't get the TV contract, the USFL sued the NFL for antitrust. And the only reason that Donald Trump sued and wanted to do this was because he believed that a settlement would include him and some other teams getting into the NFL. Right. And that's why it was done. And they went to court. The USFL actually won the lawsuit, but the damages were $1, which in antitrust was trebled to $3. And so the USFL was so thrilled when they heard, oh, we won, and then they found out it was $3, and after that, the league went away, and it was too bad because I think they had a pretty good thing going.
Mel, do you have any comments on the USFL?
Well, Donald Trump, I remember I was in Los Angeles. He called me on the phone, and I thought it was a joke. He said, this is Donald Trump. I said, yeah, right. Who is this really? He says, Donald Trump. I said, well, what do you want, Donald? He says, I want you to play football. I said, Donald, I just retired. He says, I know. He says, but I got a plane ticket and a check for you. If there's not a plane ticket at the airport, you call me back. So I ended up going to Orlando to the training camp. They had Herschel Walker, Brian Simon, they had a few guys. And it didn't work out. It didn't work out.
That's all right.
There was a great book written by a guy named Jeff Pearlman. Great holiday present for someone that, if you want to read up on the history of the USFL, it's called Football for a Buck. But a big part of it shows and has evidence of how Trump, shockingly now, didn't care about the league, didn't care about the other owners. He just wanted to get into the National Football League. Wow. It was all about himself, and that's something that obviously has never changed.
Mel, right now you've given back to the community. You're back here in St. Louis. Can you tell us, about 30 seconds about the Matthews Dickey Boys and Girls Club? What you're doing?
The Boys Club. I went over. There was a guy named Butch who asked me to come over. The coach is Ryan White. I'm just an assistant coach. The kids are 10, 11 years old. Not bad group. They won all the games except one. We ended up going to Louisville, and we played the second best team in the nation, which was awesome. But work with the kids, I love it. It helps me a little bit, and it makes me feel young. The only thing is the kids always send Mel. My dad said that you used to be fast, but I think I can beat you now. So I have to run the kids, race them a little bit. But it's wonderful to work with the kids over at Matthew Dickey. They're doing a great job.
They're so lucky to have you. It's amazing. Howard, tell us about your radio show on 590. 10 to noon, and then I know you're supporting and raising a lot of money for cancer awareness.
Yeah, Sunday mornings, NFL Sunday kickoff from 10 till noon on 590. Enjoy just talking NFL. I know people in St. Louis love the NFL no matter what the Rams say about that. And yes, Real Men Wear Pink. It was Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, but we're still raising money through the end of the year. 45 local guys who were part of Real Men Wear Pink have raised close to $100,000 already. And we each had $2,500 goals. I've gone over that, well over 4,000. I'm ranked 5th. And so I'm still looking for contributions. You can go to my Twitter at hbalzer721 or find me on Facebook. I have a little link there where you can go and contribute, and love the people in St. Louis contributing. And nationwide, they have this campaign too of Real Men Wear Pink. And nationwide, it's raised for this year over $8 million. So it's really been a tremendous, tremendous thing.
Last thing, guys, you're in the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. The ceremony is coming up. I know you're very excited about it. They got a big crew coming this year.
Yeah, they really do. And Ted Sizemore from the Cardinals will be in. Bob Rowe from the football Cardinals, 67 through 75. He played, had a really good career. I mean, this is a defensive tackle. Cardinals didn't have a lot of pass rush at the day and from the edge, but inside, he had 53 sacks
And you're introducing him, right?
Yeah, I'm introducing him.
75.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was so quick and blocked 9.5 kicks during his career. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, Melanie Steen has a story about a group of special young ladies over at University City.
I surrender, I surrender.
All right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's up?
Do we have a gun?
Make sure you driving that bottom hand. Drive that bottom hand. There, girl. Don't roll. Don't roll.
The softball team at University City High School sure made some noise this year. After starting the season at 11-0, they ended up at 12-3. They also picked up the first conference championship for the school in 20 years.
I couldn't ask for a better group of young ladies who've dedicated their summer, their fall, and just hard work and making sure that this year this was a great season. We're a family. They brought great energy, and the camaraderie that they brought to make sure that we stayed on track was just amazing.
Craig Morris has been coaching at U-City for 17 years, but this season he was called up to lead the school's softball team. And what a difference that made.
The energy this year, it was more fun. It didn't seem like a competition, like when it was like life or death. Like although we cared about whether we won or we lost, they made it fun for us.
Coach Morris graduated from U-City in 2000, and assistant coach John Bass graduated from the school in 2001. But when it was time to take the team to the next level, they knew they needed to look outside those four walls.
Thank you to Rachel Hansen, who is the ex-coach of the Stanford University softball team, who has a program called Game Changer. And she's been helping us deal with failure and how to deal with failure. So she's met with us about once or twice throughout the year to help us cope with how to keep pushing forward. And she will be assisting and help our kids get to college.
College is the next stop for Annie Rhodes, who is one of two team members graduating in the spring.
It felt amazing to win conference champions this year, especially coming from my first year. We only won one game in our entire season. So just winning so many games and like having the team that we did this year, it's been really special.
In talking with the young women, there was an underlying theme that kept coming up. They have coaches who care.
I'm really close to both of them. They're like father figures in my life. And we're all a family, and they can be a little hard on us sometimes, but sometimes we deserve it. But we're still family.
I thought the first year here was great. The team was extremely welcoming, as well as the coaches. The energy here is like a lot higher, and the students have supported us so much more.
The vibe here is all-inclusive. Any girl who wants to be on the team is on the team. And if you want to play with the boys, then why not? 4 of the young women we interviewed today also played on the baseball team, a team that also had a winning season.
I demand results. Just like the real world, it's tough, it's unfair, but it demands results. And that's what we're trying to do as coaches. Prepare these ladies to be women and prepare them for the real world.
I'm Melanie Steen reporting for Inside Sports.
That's our show for today. We especially like to thank Mel Gray and Howard Balzer for dropping by, and thank you for watching. Make sure you check out the next show, as we'll bring you sights and sounds from this year's St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame induction. We'll see you then.